Welcome to Football Trivia. In today's challenge, we want to know if you prefer football legends, players who made an era, or if you prefer current footballers. In this trivia, you'll have 10 seconds to answer each question. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our weekly trivia. Now let's start. Erling Haaland versus Ronaldo Nazario. Messi versus Maradona. Cristiano Ronaldo versus Pelé. Vinicius Jr. versus Ronaldinho. Karim Benzema versus Raul Gonzalez. Robert Lewandowski versus Romario. Luka Modric versus Clarence Seedorf. Kroos versus Fernando Redondo. Pedri versus Xavi Hernandez. Mbappe versus Thierry Henry. Harry Kane versus Alan Shearer. Kevin De Bruyne versus Zinedine Zidane. Bernardo Silva versus Luis Figo. Thiago Silva versus Lucio. Neymar versus Kaká. Rodrigo Goes versus Rivaldo. Enzo Fernandez versus Javier Mascherano. Angel Di Maria versus Mesut Ozil. Marcelo versus Roberto Carlos. Kyle Walker versus Cafu. Sergio Ramos versus Carles Puyol. Dani Carvajal versus Javier Zanetti. Rodrigo De Paul versus Diego Simeone. Julian Alvarez versus Batistuta. Alvaro Morata versus David Villa. Antonio Rudiger versus Fernando Hierro. Cody Gakpo versus Robin van Persie. Paulo Dybala versus Carlos Tevez. Lautaro Martinez versus Sergio Aguero. Thibaut Courtois versus Iker Casillas. Keylor Navas versus Oliver Kahn. Virgil van Dijk versus Ronald Koeman. Reece James versus Philipp Lahm. Riyad Mahrez versus Ryan Giggs. Bruno Fernandes versus David Beckham. Casemiro versus Dunga. Jude Bellingham versus Paul Scholes. Eduardo Camavinga versus Patrick Vieira. Rafael Varane versus Laurent Blanc. Gianluigi Donnarumma versus Peter Schmeichel. Edin Dzeko versus Miroslav Klose. Marco Verratti versus Andre Pirlo. Jamal Musiala versus Mitchell Platini. Eder Militao versus Rio Ferdinand. Joshua Kimmich versus Lothar Matthäus. Ilkay Gundogan versus Michael Ballack. Sergio Busquets versus Steven Gerrard. Bukayo Saka versus Yuri Djorkaeff. Nicolas Otamendi versus Roberto Ayala. Hugo Lloris versus Fabien Barthez. Tell us in the comments, do you prefer current players or do you stick with the legends? And tell us, who is that player who doesn't matter who they compete against and is always your favorite?